Lunch hour was routine. Trays clattered. Voices filled the mess hall. Then the doors opened, and every recruit instantly pushed back their chairs, standing in silence. They weren't saluting a stranger. They were honoring a legend. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story intrigues you, subscribe for more untold tales of those who serve in ways we never see. The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Fort Braxton's main mess hall, illuminating dust motes dancing above long wooden tables where nearly 300 military personnel consumed their standard-issue lunch. The rhythmic clatter of metal trays and the steady hum of conversation created the familiar soundtrack of military dining, a comforting routine that had remained unchanged for decades across every base in the armed forces. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos sat alone at a corner table near the kitchen entrance, her uniform impeccably pressed despite the cafeteria duty that had occupied her morning hours. To the hundreds of soldiers, Marines, airmen, and sailors who passed her table without acknowledgement, she appeared to be exactly what her duty roster indicated, a logistics coordinator whose primary responsibilities involved inventory management and supply chain documentation for the base's administrative operations. The mess hall personnel moved with practiced efficiency around the woman they had nicknamed Clipboard during her 6-month assignment to Fort Braxton, treating her with the polite indifference typically reserved for support staff whose contributions to military readiness were presumed to be limited to paperwork and regulatory compliance rather than operational significance. They called her the auditor behind her back, because while career military personnel spent their off-duty time discussing tactics, physical training, or advancement opportunities, Maria sat quietly in corners with government-issued laptops and manila folders, reviewing supply requisitions and maintenance schedules that most base personnel considered mundane bureaucracy rather than critical infrastructure. Sergeants walked past her seating area without recognition. Even junior officers treated her like necessary overhead, required for maintaining Defense Department compliance standards, but fundamentally disconnected from the real mission of military preparedness and operational excellence. Commander Harrison Blake concluded the midday briefing in the adjacent conference room, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never questioned his own position in the military hierarchy. Blake's chest displayed an impressive collection of ribbons and commendations that testified to 25 years of distinguished administrative service, though his combat experience remained limited to training exercises and staff positions in secure rear area locations. Today's logistics review confirms our operational readiness, Blake announced to the assembled department heads, his tone suggesting the kind of bureaucratic satisfaction that characterized career administrators who measured success through paperwork compliance rather than mission accomplishment. All supply chain metrics are within acceptable parameters, and inventory discrepancies have been reduced to minimal levels. The senior NCOs nodded approvingly, their attention focused on statistical reports and budget analyses that demonstrated efficient resource management but revealed little about the complex realities of military operations under adverse conditions. Maria's notebook, however, contained far more than routine logistics documentation. Her meticulous handwriting filled page after page with strategic analysis, resource allocation assessments, operational planning observations, and tactical recommendations that demonstrated understanding of military logistics that went far beyond her official administrative designation. But these insights remained private, hidden within personal study materials that no one bothered to examine or request. After the briefing session ended and department heads dispersed to their various afternoon duties, Maria remained in the mess hall, ostensibly to complete routine inventory documentation, but actually to continue her private analysis of base operations and resource management issues that seemed to escape the attention of senior leadership focused on statistical compliance rather than operational effectiveness. Private Jenkins, one of the younger soldiers assigned to mess hall operations, approached with obvious curiosity about Maria's continuous documentation habits and comprehensive knowledge of military procedures that seemed to exceed her official duties and administrative background. "Sergeant, why do you spend so much time reviewing those supply manuals? Most of the logistics folks just worry about keeping the numbers balanced and the auditors happy." Maria's response reflected the careful balance she maintained between sharing knowledge and avoiding attention that might result in unwanted scrutiny of her background or qualifications. Details matter, Jenkins. The more you understand about how military operations really work, the better equipped you are to ensure that people get what they need when they need it. But your support staff, not operations, Jenkins pointed out with the logic of someone who understood military organization in terms of rigid occupational specialties and clearly defined roles rather than integrated capabilities that might transcend traditional boundaries. Maria looked up from the logistics documentation she was allegedly reviewing, her eyes reflecting depths of experience and understanding that seemed inconsistent with her official administrative record and current assignment. In the military, Jenkins, everyone eventually supports the mission. Understanding logistics isn't just helpful, it's essential for ensuring that operational personnel have what they need to succeed. The conversation was interrupted when the base public address system activated with formal tones that instantly transformed the routine afternoon into a high-priority event requiring immediate attention from all available personnel. The base commander's voice carried across every building and facility within the secure military installation. All personnel, attention to orders. Presidential visit commencing in 30 minutes. All department heads report to headquarters building for VIP protocol briefing. Dress uniform required for all personnel. Maria was on her feet before the announcement finished, her documentation forgotten as years of suppressed training and protocol experience surged back to immediate readiness. Jenkins stared at her transformation from quiet administrator to focused military professional, the change dramatic enough to be clearly visible even to someone with limited experience in high-level ceremonial procedures. "What do we do, Sergeant?" Jenkins asked, his voice reflecting the uncertainty of someone whose training had prepared him for routine mess hall operations rather than presidential protocol and VIP security requirements. Maria was already moving toward the administration building with purposeful efficiency that suggested extensive familiarity with VIP procedures, her administrative demeanor completely replaced by something much more commanding and protocol-oriented. "We ensure that everything is perfect. Presidential visits don't happen by accident, and they don't tolerate mistakes." Within 20 minutes, the base's senior leadership had assembled in the headquarters conference room, 40 officers and senior NCOs preparing for the highest-level visit in the installation's history. Commander Blake conducted a hasty briefing based on limited advance information from White House security personnel, his preparation obviously inadequate for the complexity of presidential protocol requirements. Current information suggests a brief inspection tour and informal interaction with selected personnel, Blake explained to the assembled leadership, his voice carrying controlled tension of someone managing an event far beyond his normal experience level. "We have minimal advance notice and limited details about the president's specific agenda or requirements." Maria raised her hand from her position in the back row, her voice carrying more authority than anyone had previously heard from the quiet logistics coordinator who spent most of her time documenting supply procedures rather than participating in command decisions. "Sir, presidential visits require comprehensive security coordination, protocol specialists, and advance teams that typically arrive days before the actual visit. The fact that we're receiving 30 minutes notice suggests this isn't a standard inspection tour." Blake looked at her with obvious skepticism, his expression reflecting doubt about accepting protocol advice from someone whose experience was officially limited to supply chain management and administrative oversight. "Sergeant, I appreciate your concerns, but we have qualified personnel handling VIP protocol. We don't need theoretical speculation about presidential procedures." Maria's response was measured but firm, her tone suggesting confidence and knowledge that had been dismissed too many times to ignore when institutional reputation was at stake. "Sir, with respect, this isn't theoretical. Presidential protocol requires specific procedures that, if not followed precisely, can create diplomatic incidents and security vulnerabilities." "Then what do you suggest, Sergeant?" Blake asked, his question carrying more irritation than genuine interest in her protocol recommendations. Maria moved to the organizational chart mounted on the conference room wall, her finger tracing command relationships and coordination requirements that would be essential for managing a successful presidential visit. Her knowledge of military protocol and VIP procedures was comprehensive and detailed, suggesting familiarity with high-level operations that exceeded her official administrative training and experience. There should be advanced security sweeps, communication protocol with White House staff, coordination with Secret Service advance teams, and specific positioning requirements for all personnel who will have direct contact with the president. The fact that we haven't received this information suggests either a security emergency or a deliberately informal visit. Blake studied the protocol framework Maria had outlined, his assessment revealing growing recognition that her administrative analysis might have more operational value than her logistics designation had suggested. How do you know presidential protocol procedures well enough to coordinate VIP visits? Maria's carefully maintained administrative identity began showing stress fractures under the pressure of institutional necessity and protocol reality that required honest assessment of capabilities rather than maintaining comfortable fiction about her background and qualifications. I've studied every available regulation and procedure manual for this installation, Commander. Protocol analysis is part of effective administrative oversight. Before Blake could respond further, the base security office's radio communication system crackled with urgent transmission from the main gate, confirming that the presidential motorcade was approaching the installation ahead of the projected timeline. Fort Braxton Base Operations, this is White House Security Detail Alpha. Presidential convoy is 2 minutes from main gate. Confirm all personnel are in position for arrival ceremony. Blake made his decision with the kind of rapid assessment that military leadership required when institutional reputation was at stake and time was running out for proper preparation. Sergeant Santos, you're now acting protocol coordinator. If your procedure analysis is accurate, implement whatever arrangements are necessary for proper presidential reception. Maria's transformation was immediate and complete. The quiet administrator who had spent months being dismissed as unsuitable for operational responsibilities was replaced by someone whose protocol competence and ceremonial presence had been hidden beneath careful camouflage of bureaucratic pursuits and supply chain documentation. Roger, Commander. I'll need direct communication with base security and authorization to coordinate personnel positioning for proper ceremonial protocol. Blake's surprise at Maria's professional confidence and protocol terminology was obvious, but institutional urgency prevented detailed questioning of her apparent expertise in areas outside her official administrative specialty. Granted, make it happen. The presidential motorcade arrived at Fort Braxton's main gate exactly on schedule, a precision-timed convoy of armored vehicles and security personnel that transformed the routine military installation into the temporary seat of executive authority. As the official vehicles proceeded toward the headquarters building, Maria coordinated reception procedures with the efficiency of someone who had managed similar events many times before. The mess hall had been hastily converted into a reception area where 300 military personnel stood in perfect formation, their dress uniforms creating geometric patterns of military precision and ceremonial excellence. Maria's positioning recommendations had maximized the visual impact while ensuring proper security protocols and emergency evacuation procedures. As the presidential limousine came to a stop, Maria's voice came across the base communication system with calm authority that seemed completely inconsistent with her previous role as quiet administrative support. All personnel, attention to orders. Presidential party approaching. Maintain ceremonial posture until dismissed by command authority. Commander Blake stared at Maria with growing amazement, finally understanding that the quiet logistics coordinator who had been dismissed as too bureaucratic for operational understanding was actually demonstrating protocol knowledge that exceeded his own training and experience in VIP procedures. Sergeant, where did you learn presidential protocol at this level of expertise? Maria's carefully constructed administrative identity was collapsing under operational pressure that required honest assessment of her capabilities rather than continued pretense about her background and qualifications. Previous assignment, sir. I can explain later, but right now we have a commander-in-chief who deserves proper military courtesy. The ceremony Maria coordinated was textbook perfect for presidential protocol. Her positioning arrangements successfully accommodated security requirements while providing optimal ceremonial presentation, enabling a flawless reception despite minimal advance preparation and inadequate initial planning. As the president emerged from the limousine, accompanied by senior White House staff and Secret Service personnel, the precision of Maria's arrangements became immediately apparent. Every detail had been anticipated and prepared, from security positioning to ceremonial timing to emergency contingencies. But what happened next surprised everyone, including Maria herself. The president, instead of proceeding directly to Commander Blake for the formal reception, stopped immediately upon seeing Maria positioned with the other senior NCOs. His face showed instant recognition, and without hesitation, he rendered a crisp military salute directly to her before acknowledging any other personnel. Staff Sergeant Santos, the president said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent formation. It's an honor to see you again. The assembled military personnel watched in stunned amazement as Maria returned the president's salute with perfect precision, her bearing and ceremony suggesting familiarity with presidential interaction rather than first-time exposure to executive authority. Commander Blake stood frozen with shock, his face draining of color as he realized that the logistics coordinator he had dismissed as administratively useful but operationally irrelevant was receiving personal recognition from the President of the United States. Mr. President, Maria replied, her voice clear and controlled despite the obvious surprise of the unexpected recognition. Thank you for visiting Fort Braxton, sir. The president turned to address the assembled formation, but his attention remained focused on Maria as he spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, you are in the presence of one of the finest military professionals I have ever had the privilege to work with. Staff Sergeant Santos exemplifies everything that makes our armed forces the best in the world. He paused, then continued with obvious respect and admiration. 2 years ago, Staff Sergeant Santos was instrumental in coordinating the logistics for Operation Thunder Shield, the largest humanitarian relief effort in our nation's history. When Hurricane Helena devastated the Gulf Coast, it was her organizational expertise and strategic planning that enabled us to save thousands of lives. The president's voice carried across the silent formation as he continued. For 6 weeks, Staff Sergeant Santos worked 18-hour days coordinating supply chains, managing resource allocation, and ensuring that relief supplies reached communities that had been cut off from all outside assistance. Her work was classified at the highest levels, which is why most of you have never heard this story. But I have not forgotten, the president concluded, looking directly at Maria. And neither has this nation. Admiral Richardson, who had accompanied the presidential party, stepped forward with a velvet case. Staff Sergeant Santos, by order of the president and with the gratitude of a nation, it is my honor to present you with the Defense Superior Service Medal for exceptionally meritorious service in a position of great responsibility. As the admiral pinned the medal to her uniform, the assembled military personnel erupted in spontaneous applause. Maria remained at rigid attention, her expression controlled, though those closest could see the emotion in her eyes. Commander Blake finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. Sir, I had no idea about her background or qualifications. The president's response was measured but carried an unmistakable edge of disappointment. Commander, that's precisely the problem. Staff Sergeant Santos has spent 6 months at this installation, and apparently no one bothered to review her actual service record or understand her capabilities. He turned back to Maria. Staff Sergeant, I understand you've been assigned to logistics documentation. Is that the best use of your talents and experience? Maria's response was carefully diplomatic, understanding that her answer would affect not only her own situation, but potentially the career of Commander Blake and the operational effectiveness of the entire installation. Mr. President, every assignment provides opportunities to serve and learn. Administrative duties have given me valuable insights into base operations and resource management. The president smiled slightly, recognizing the professionalism behind her tactful response. Spoken like a true professional. However, I think we can find better ways to utilize your expertise. He turned to address Commander Blake directly. Commander, effective immediately, Staff Sergeant Santos is promoted to Master Sergeant and assigned as your Deputy Operations Officer. I trust you'll make better use of her capabilities in her new position. Blake swallowed hard, his face flushed with embarrassment and recognition of his failure to properly assess the personnel under his command. Yes, Mr. President. Absolutely, sir. After the ceremony, the formal proceedings transitioned into a more personal interaction. The President opened the floor for questions from selected personnel, creating a rare opportunity for direct engagement with executive leadership. Master Sergeant Santos, one soldier asked, "How did you maintain your expertise while assigned to administrative duties?" Maria smiled slightly. "Every assignment teaches you something. Administrative work taught me how military installations really function, what challenges personnel face daily, and where improvements can be made to better support mission readiness." Another service member raised her hand. "The coordination work during Hurricane Helena. How did you manage such a complex operation?" "Logistics is about understanding connections," Maria replied. "Understanding how resources move, where bottlenecks occur, and how to prioritize competing requirements. Whether it's combat operations or disaster relief, the principles remain the same." Private Jenkins, who had witnessed Maria's transformation from the beginning, asked quietly, "Master Sergeant, why didn't you ever mention your background or request a different assignment?" Maria's composure softened slightly as she considered the question. "Because sometimes the most important work happens when no one is watching. Administrative duties gave me the opportunity to understand this base's operations from the ground up, to identify issues that might not be visible from command positions." She looked across the assembled personnel. "The lesson here isn't about recognition or advancement. It's about taking pride in whatever mission you're assigned, understanding that every job contributes to our overall effectiveness, and being ready when your experience is needed." The President nodded approvingly. Master Sergeant Santos embodies the kind of professionalism and dedication that makes our military the finest in the world. Her willingness to serve with distinction regardless of assignment is an example for all of us. Later that evening, as the presidential party departed and Fort Braxton returned to routine operations, Maria stood in her newly assigned office reviewing the operational responsibilities that came with her promotion. Commander Blake approached quietly, stopping at a respectful distance. "Master Sergeant," he began, his voice carrying obvious regret, "I owe you an apology. I failed to properly assess your capabilities and experience. That failure is mine alone." Maria turned to face him, her expression thoughtful rather than accusatory. "Commander, military organizations are complex. It's easy to make assumptions based on current assignments rather than understanding complete service records." "That's generous of you," Blake replied, "but it doesn't excuse my failure as a leader. How do we move forward from here?" Maria gestured toward the organizational charts and operational procedures displayed on her office walls. "We focus on making this installation more effective. We review our personnel assignments to ensure we're maximizing everyone's capabilities. We create systems that identify and develop talent regardless of current position." Blake nodded seriously. "What do you need from me to make that happen?" "Trust," Maria said simply. "Trust that expertise can come from unexpected places, and willingness to listen when people offer insights based on their experience." "You have it," Blake replied immediately. "What else?" Maria smiled slightly. "Time to review every person assigned to this base. I suspect there are others whose capabilities we haven't fully recognized or utilized." 6 months later, Fort Braxton had been transformed into one of the most efficient military installations in the continental United States. Master Sergeant Santos's operational improvements had increased readiness ratings, reduced administrative overhead, and created professional development opportunities that maximized personnel capabilities regardless of their official specialties. The mess hall where Maria had once sat alone now served as a cross-training facility where personnel from different specialties shared knowledge and developed broader understanding of military operations. The logistics documentation that had once been viewed as bureaucratic paperwork had become strategic planning tools that enhanced operational effectiveness. On this particular morning, Master Sergeant Santos stood before a mixed group of officers and enlisted personnel, presenting her analysis of resource optimization and personnel development initiatives. "Efficiency isn't just about numbers," she explained, pacing slowly before the assembled group. "It's about understanding connections, recognizing potential, and creating systems that allow people to contribute their best capabilities to mission success." She gestured toward charts showing improved readiness metrics and reduced operational costs. 6 months ago, this installation was performing adequately according to standard measures. Today, we're exceeding performance standards while reducing resource consumption and increasing personnel satisfaction. Captain Morrison, who had been promoted to serve as her executive officer, joined her at the front of the group. The key innovation has been Master Sergeant Santos's cross-functional approach. Instead of rigid specialty boundaries, we're developing personnel who understand how their work connects to overall mission success. After dismissing the briefing session, Maria walked to the memorial garden that had been established near the headquarters building. A single granite marker now stood bearing the names of personnel who had lost their lives during Hurricane Helena relief operations, honoring those whose sacrifice had made the massive humanitarian effort possible. It had become her daily ritual to visit this place, a moment of reflection that connected her current mission with the experience that had shaped her understanding of military service beyond traditional boundaries. As she completed her tribute, she became aware of someone waiting at a respectful distance. A young lieutenant stood at attention, clearly nervous about approaching the installation's deputy operations officer, but determined nonetheless. "Master Sergeant Santos," the lieutenant began. "Permission to ask a question, ma'am?" Maria nodded once. "Granted. Is it true what they say, that you coordinated relief supplies for 500,000 people with just a laptop and a satellite phone?" Maria studied the eager face before her, recognizing the same hunger for understanding that had once driven her own professional development, the same desire to comprehend how individual contributions connected to larger purposes. Technology was just the tool, she corrected. The real work was understanding what people needed, where resources were available, and how to connect requirements with capabilities under extremely challenging conditions. What was going through your mind during those 6 weeks? Maria looked toward the memorial marker. "I wasn't thinking about recognition or career advancement. I was thinking about families who needed clean water, medical supplies, and basic necessities to survive. About communities that had been forgotten by standard relief systems." She turned back to the lieutenant. "The coordination doesn't matter. What matters is understanding that military service means being ready to help when people need you most, regardless of whether that help fits your official job description." The lieutenant nodded seriously, absorbing the lesson. "Now," Maria said with a slight smile, "if you want to understand how complex logistics operations really work, report to the cross-training session at 1,400 hours. Captain Morrison and I will be running a practical exercise for anyone willing to expand their understanding beyond their current specialty." As the lieutenant hurried away, Maria remained by the memorial marker, watching as the midday sun illuminated the bustling activity of a military installation operating at peak efficiency. In the distance, she could see personnel from different specialties working together on projects that transcended traditional organizational boundaries. She placed her hand briefly on the granite marker. "We're making it count," she said quietly, "just like you would have wanted." Then she turned and walked back toward the headquarters building, ready to continue the work of transforming institutional assumptions into operational excellence, of ensuring that talent was recognized and developed regardless of where it was discovered. The wind picked up slightly as she walked, carrying the sounds of a military installation where every person understood their connection to mission success. For the first time in years, the weight of unrecognized potential felt lighter on her shoulders. Excellence had found its recognition. The impossible assumption that talent could hide in plain sight had been proven wrong, and somewhere, she believed, those who had served with distinction in forgotten places were finally at peace.